Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. Coming up in this edition, all around the world, Jewish communities gather to protest the latest ruling by the French courts. The latest salvo of rockets from Gaza proves Hamas has better technology than before. And now that sports are back, an Israeli basketball team wins big in Europe. From the streets of Paris to Tel Aviv to New York, thousands of protesters demanding the French courts reverse the decision not to try the murderer of Sarah Halimi, killed in a violent anti-Semitic attack. Take a look.
D'abord crier, j'ai tué le chétan. Encore une imprécision. Quand il a fini de tuer
Massive protests sparked up around the world on Sunday after a not guilty verdict in the murder case of Sarah Halimi this week. In Israel, thousands gathering outside the French embassy in Tel Aviv, waving French and Israeli flags and "Shame on France" signs high into the air.
But more than that, it is about French law. It is about international law. It is about trustees of the law. Because if we remember France's foundational values, égalité, fraternité, liberté, they have been so badly undermined by this single case and cause of Sarah Halimi. So this is not just the imperative for France to address the terrible injustice done to Sarah, to her family, to her community. It is about the injustice to the very law that France is based upon.
Lawmakers and Jewish groups alike calling for massive reform in French law, as under the current law, people cannot be held criminally responsible for actions committed while fully losing their judgment due to drugs or psychiatric disorders. In this case, the court blamed cannabis. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron taking sympathy with the protesters, agreeing that it is time for a change in the French law. While the main demonstrations were held in Paris and Tel Aviv, hundreds also took to the streets of London, Rome, New York, Miami, and Los Angeles.
You are going to write letters to French consulates around the world. You're going to be nice, but you're going to be firm. The laws must change. Let's say it. The laws must change.
As for now, France is feeling immense pressure from the global community to reform its outdated legal system and bring Sarah Halimi's killer to justice. Moving on now, tensions are heating up between Israel and the Gaza Strip. Israel deciding to close Gaza's offshore fishing area in retaliation for a continued rocket fire. Israel is closing Gaza's fishing zone starting 6 a.m. Monday and until further notice. Hamas is calling it a blatant violation of Palestinian rights, while Israel says the closure is part of their response to the ongoing rocket fire that took place over the weekend. The latest of which saw 3 projectiles fired at Israeli communities overnight Sunday, the attack triggering rocket alert sirens in surrounding communities. Experts say Israel's decision to close the fishing zone could lead to further escalation. Now, let's see where this is all going with Reserves Brigadier General Nitzan Nuriel, who's also the former head of the Counterterrorism Bureau at the Prime Minister's office. Thank you, sir, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Well, Hamas says the rockets that they're sending from Gaza are in solidarity with what's going on in Jerusalem. Does that mean as tensions in Jerusalem ease, so will the rockets? Some say that, the closing of the fishing zone will cause even more tensions and a response from Hamas. Do authorities expect this to just slowly disappear?
We need to understand that in the Middle East, especially in Israel, everything connected to everything. So when Hamas launched rocket because of Jerusalem, it's not only because of Jerusalem. And the steps that we took this morning to minimize the fishing area is part of the dialogue between the sides, which happened in the past. And it's too soon to say if this is the end of this conflict or only the beginning of it.
Right, and the last major conflict between Israel and Gaza, of course, was in 2014. Many say we could be overdue for some sort of escalation, especially with COVID hindering resources. Now that everyone is beginning to come out of it, are we preparing for more aggression?
If you ask the Israeli side, the answer is no. We are not looking for that, and we don't want to be there. And if you ask me, even Hamas does not want to be there. But Hamas has to say something. He needs to say something as part of the Palestinian elections issues. He has to say something because he believes that Israel needs to give them more regarding COVID. COVID is still a big issue in Gaza. And he needs to say something inside Gaza to the people who are trying to challenge Hamas. So Hamas sometimes take actions because he's under pressure, he needs to do something, and launch rockets. It's always easy things, especially when he knows that Israel does not want to go into a larger conflict.
Well, according to the IDF, Hamas has actually improved its rocket precision. They had a military exercise over the weekend where we got to see some of their military technology. Will that affect Israel's missile defense capability against the group in Gaza?
The answer is yes. It's like never or ongoing competition between those who are launching rockets and those who are protecting the state of Israel from rockets. They improve themselves, we improve ourselves, and it is kind of never-ending story. They will have better warheads, and we have to find better detections, and so far and so on. And I believe that the last word still in front of us.
Can you possibly be a bit more specific in terms of the missile technology that we've been seeing and hearing about in Gaza? What are we looking at exactly?
Without touching the specific numbers, I can tell you that the progress we saw along the years is the size of the salvo. If in the past the salvo was made by 1 or 2 rockets, now they're trying to reach 12 or sometimes 14 rockets at the same time, which is basically a challenge for the system. So we are trying to make sure that we can take care of largest salvos up to 35, 45, and they will try to reach that number or even have larger salvos that the number they believe we can take care of.
Right. All right. We will, of course, continue to follow all these developments. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today on our program.
Thank you very much.
Palestinians gathered in celebration outside Jerusalem's Damascus Gate on Sunday night after barriers put up by Israeli police were removed, allowing them to access the square that became the focus of nightly Ramadan clashes. More in the next report. Palestinians celebrated as police barriers came down outside Jerusalem's Damascus Gate Sunday night, allowing them access to a square that's a popular meeting place during the holy month of Ramadan. Thousands filled the East Jerusalem plaza, many waving Palestinian flags. Scuffles broke out, however, as Israeli police waded into the crowd to confiscate the flags. Clashes in the holy city followed the start of Ramadan nearly 2 weeks ago. Protesters threw stones at police in riot gear, who tried to disperse them using horses and foul-smelling water. Anger also spilled into the West Bank over the Israeli police decision to prevent crowds from gathering outside of the historic Damascus Gate. Israeli Arab lawmaker Ahmad Tibi said he supported the decision to reopen the area.
The one who took the decision to close it was mistaken. The decision to reopen is right. Now they stop aggression against Palestinians. It is a good direction and a good decision in the right direction.
Violence peaked last week when Palestinian medics said 100 people were injured as Israeli police arrested more than 50 protesters, and rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel in solidarity. The protests were met by international appeals from Jordan, Turkey, and the UAE to reverse the restrictions at Damascus Gate and allow Ramadan gatherings to take place. It seems Netanyahu is slowly losing his grip on power, and all options are on the table to hold on to his seat as prime minister. Now, a new report says he is so desperate, he's offering other party leaders, including Benny Gantz, a deal in which they would rotate the premiership, like last time. But this time, apparently, Gantz could go first. Is he really willing to hand over his power, even if just temporarily? Let's find out what's behind this all with Gil Hoffman, political correspondent from the Jerusalem Post. Thank you, Gil, for joining me.
Pleasure being with you, Lauren.
So have we really come to a point that the only way for Netanyahu to remain in power is to give up power? Otherwise, what are his intentions here? Could this be his last option?
It's a strange irony that Netanyahu initiated this election in order to prevent there being a changeover in the prime minister's office with Benny Gantz, as there was supposed to be in November, according to the previous coalition agreement. And here he is. He has 8.5 days left as we stand here with his mandate to form a government. And because he can't, now he's offering Gantz, out of all people, to go first in a rotation in the prime minister's office. According to my sources, he's also asked Shas leader Aryeh Deri. He's asked Knesset Speaker Yariv Levin. He has not asked Naftali Bennett. Bennett, who would go first in rotation in the prime minister's office if the anti-Netanyahu camp forms a government. Netanyahu has not agreed to rotate with him at all.
Interesting. So, of course, like you mentioned, he hasn't asked all the party leaders that are siding with him to make this kind of deal. How is he picking and choosing the specific leaders that he's spoken to?
Apparently with people who he could get along with. And he knows that he can't get along with Bennett. He can't trust Bennett. He knows that Gideon Sa'ar, who he also has an offer to, would say no. So he hasn't bothered with that either. And he does, he has personal disputes with the two of them. And it seems like as much as he cares about remaining with at least being alternate prime minister and prime minister later on and maintaining the prime minister's residence on Balfour Street in Jerusalem, maintaining his personal honor and self-respect seems to be his top priority.
Interesting. On the other hand, it seems like a rotation between Bennett and Lapid might actually be able to work. Is Lapid really willing to allow Bennett to be the prime minister first? What exactly is happening there?
So, right now as we speak, there is a meeting going on between Bennett and Gideon Sa'ar here at the Knesset. There are meetings taking place of Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid and leaders of his camp. He's going to be meeting in a few minutes with Merav Michaeli, the leader of the Labor Party. Everyone's talking to everybody in order to try to reach an agreement to form a government the moment that Netanyahu's mandate ends. And Lapid said today in the faction meeting that I covered, which is in this room, that he thinks that the deal could be closed within a week.
So you mentioned that Netanyahu has 8 days left with this mandate. Explain to us what is going to happen after that 8-day deadline.
Okay, so if nothing changes, then what would happen is the deadline is May 4th at 11:59 p.m. On May 5th, President Rivlin announces that any of the party leaders who want to change their mind about who they recommended before in the first round of negotiations and consultations with him can either visit him or call him. Chances are there wouldn't be more than 2 or 3 parties that would do that. And then Rivlin would then announce sometime on May 5th that Yair Lapid is the person who then has the most recommendations after Netanyahu to form a government would be given the mandate. Now, that's if they don't finalize a deal between now and then, Lauren. If they do finalize a deal between now and then Bennett will tell Rivlin, I have 61 recommendations to form a government, and so give me the mandate. And Lapid will say, I'm now recommending Bennett, as will Labor and Meretz that recommended Lapid before, and Sa'ar, who recommended no one. And then we'd already have Bennett be given a mandate then on the 5th of May, and an agreement reached to form a government not too long afterward. And then we can focus on actually running the country and, of course, having the election for president, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely. I'm sure this could play out in so many different ways, and we'll all have to wait and see. Gil Hoffman, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Well, the numbers are continuing to head in the right trajectory. And now Israel's health minister says he plans to ease even more restrictions, as nearly 80% of the population has been vaccinated. Chana Rifkin reports.
Post-pandemic government plan hopes to see the country nearly entirely open to those who are vaccinated and ease restrictions for those who are not. Health Minister Yuli Edelstein will propose to the government to allow unvaccinated individuals to visit pools and gyms, and also remove capacity rules for gatherings operating under the Green Pass system. The new rules, to be implemented Thursday if approved, include the following. Open-air gatherings will allow up to 500 in open-air space, 50 indoors. Limits on sports stadiums will be reversed, and restrictions on public transport will be canceled. Those who are unvaccinated will be able to participate in nearly all public activities as long as they have a negative test. But the airport rules will remain out of concerns over new variants. Israel's COVID Commissioner Nachman Ash says he has no intention of dropping restrictions altogether, as mass infections are still possible. Ash added that despite Israel's inoculation drive, which has seen more than 80% of the adult population vaccinated, a case of mass infection took place recently in the city of Pardes Chana Karkor. A total of 46 people were infected with the virus, including 38 children. Also praising the country's inoculation drive, Ash called the campaign, quote, Israel's medical Iron Dome. On Sunday, Israel recorded just 77 new infections, and there are 150 in serious condition. Over 5 million Israelis have been vaccinated. Even so, young Israelis are not quite ready to go back to work. According to the country's Employment Service Bureau, although restaurants and hotels were allowed to fully reopen in March, the number of job seekers in the field did not increase after February. Most employees in the service industry are under the age of 35. For now, those not interested in returning to work can still claim unemployment for a few more months longer. Maybe then we can get back to normal. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
A 1,600-year-old mosaic was uncovered in Yavne, Israel, and archaeologists say it may have once graced a mansion in an affluent neighborhood. The Israel Antiquities Authority says the multicolored mosaic flooring, dated to the Byzantine era, was unearthed during excavations and is set to go on display soon. Let's see what we can learn from this discovery with Israeli tour guide Anat Harel. Thank you so much, Anat, for joining me today.
Hello, hello, hello.
So another beautiful mosaic was found in Israel from the Byzantine times this time. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, apparently, in some excavations in Yavne, which is close to Tel Aviv in the central area, they discovered a large mosaic in a building, and they believe it's a residential structure. They didn't think much of it because it was very dull and didn't look like much. However, once they started cleaning it, they realized that the mosaic sort of had like a patina on it, some kind of a covering that had dulled the colors. And when they started to take it off, they discovered a beautifully designed, beautiful geometric design mosaic that was actually lovely and very, very colorful.
Wow, it's really very beautiful. And I understand that this is, of course, not the only mosaic that has been discovered in this area. Is it common to find them? And how significant is it when these kind of things are found in the country?
Well, yes, so mosaics were very, very common, starting from the Greek times to the Roman times to the Byzantine times. They were perfected in the Byzantine times, which were like 4th century, 5th, 6th. In this land, in the land of Israel, we count the Byzantine era like the 4th, 5th, 6th, and the beginning of the 7th century, okay? During that time, the Byzantines expressed their art and their spirituality and their beauty in buildings with mosaics. They put them on the walls, they put them in the ceilings, they put them on the floors, they put them everywhere. And through the mosaics, they expressed their religion and their traditions and beautiful things, yes.
And what else can we learn from looking at these mosaics about the culture and about the time period, about what was going on there at that time?
So during the Byzantine times, we had Jews living in this land and we had Christians living in this land. Each group expressed different things with their art. This was art, okay? So if you're talking about the Jewish inhabitants of the land during that time, for example, in Tzipori, which is right here in the Galilee, in Tzipori, we have gorgeous mosaics from the Byzantine times, the floors of synagogues with gorgeous drawings and Greek gods, which was very, very unusual. We thought it was unusual, but it turns out for the Jews of the Byzantine times, Greek gods and Greek art was just art. And so synagogue floors have beautiful interpretations of Apollo and of different Greek gods. It's quite fabulous. And then Christian churches, all right, on the floor also put beautiful geometric designs, and the stories, different stories were expressed with art, with mosaics on the floors. On the walls and on the ceilings was another story. Because the floors of residences and churches and synagogues were stepped on, then they didn't put anything holy on the floor because it was stepped on. It was disrespectful. The walls and the ceilings, those we don't see anymore because they tumble down. What we usually find are the floors of churches and the floors of synagogues. That's why we look down and we see, but they also had them on the walls and on the ceilings. And there they put beautiful icons and beautiful religious interpretations of whatever group was decorating the walls and ceilings. Just gorgeous things have been found all over the Galilee, all over the land of Israel. We have a lot of beautiful examples of beautiful mosaics from the Byzantine times, including in Haifa. There's a beautiful outdoor mosaic floor from a church from Byzantine times in Tel Shikmona, right on the beach in Haifa. Just gorgeous stuff.
I'm curious, Anat, what happens to these tiled mosaics after they're discovered? Are they put in museums? Are they put up for sale? Or are they just sort of left where they are for people to come see and appreciate them in the area in which they were built?
You know, that, first of all, that always depends on the budget. And it always depends on where and what is found. For example, let me give you Tel Shikmona, which is right on the beach in Haifa. What happened there is that they did all kinds of excavations, discovered finds from the Canaanite times and from the Persian times and from the Greek times. And when they got to the Byzantine level, they discovered a beautiful, large church with a gorgeous mosaic. And the University of Haifa decided they were going to excavate and make a little park. So they excavated it, cleaned it up, and money ran out. So money ran out and it sat there for several years, and it filled with weeds and all kinds of vegetation started to grow on it. And now when you go to the beach in Haifa, you can go and look at this gorgeous mosaic floor that's covered with vegetation and weeds. And it's really too bad. It's always about the budget. Is there a budget to keep it, to maintain it or not? If there is, then great. And if there are not, then many times it just sits there open to the, you know, if it's a national park, then you have a budget. But it's outdoors, sometimes it's just there and people can go and look at it. Yeah, it really depends. It really
Isn't
depends.
everything always about money, Anat? Thank you very much.
It's always about the budget, yes.
All the best, Anat. Thank you. Well, this is exciting news. Israel's Ironi Nes Ziona basketball team won the FIBA Europe Cup title on Sunday evening. The team taking the trophy after an 82-74 win against Poland in the Final Four in Tel Aviv. In one of the first large sporting events since the outbreak of COVID-19, around 4,000 spectators were cheering on that win. All right, on that note, let's take a look at the weather forecast with our Chana Rifkin.
Looking at tonight and tomorrow, Israel's calling for mostly partly cloudy skies, although expecting some showers in the north and sunny skies in the south. Now lows this evening simmering in the mid to upper teens in Celsius, and then tomorrow highs expecting to get into the 20s. Pleasant weather continuing this week. I know I'm enjoying it. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you very much, Chana Rifkin. And now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
סליחה, אתה פה? אפשר מים?
That dog actually went to the fridge to go get a bottle, and he's selling it to a customer. That is one of the smartest dogs I've ever seen. My dog could never do that. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.25 shekels to the American dollar and 2.6 shekels to the Canadian dollar. And finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Lauren Izzo. Be well, and thank you for watching.